All six of us are here. It's
All
7 o'clock.
six, it's
We
7
should probably wait
o'clock.
for Beverly.
I'm here.
Water tastes good.
Yeah, it was, where did I put it? Oh, it's in mine.
Thank you so much. For your signature.
No, I
Yeah,
don't.
there's a car that just veered off the road and 6 sheriff's cars, 2 fire trucks, and an ambulance. I went for the car.
I
Where was
saw,
that?
somebody made a note
Pass it back
that they had driven away with the first ambulance was driven away. I think that was the backup.
Okay. Wow, yikes.
We need passing around.
Okay.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Yes, Director Clark,
Here.
Director Blanchard,
Here.
Director Reddick. Here. Director Slater-Carter,
Present.
Director Penrose,
Here.
and Director Boyd.
Here.
Turn off your phones. Let me see, Pledge of Allegiance. I forgot the Pledge of Allegiance. It was the wrong order. I'm left-handed. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, special order of the day. We are going to adjourn tonight in recognition of public service recognition, recognition, not resignation, sorry guys.
You don't have to read the whole thing, I just thought you might be interested in the federal resolution that they did for public.
Well, that will speed the meeting up
Yeah, you
immensely.
don't have to read it, it's more for information.
However, what it essentially says is, we rely and are very thankful for our public service workers who help us be a safe, sane, and healthy, and educated community. Public comment. I see no slips, I see no hands waving, I see no public comment. We are going to convene in closed session, and I have asked to eliminate item B, conference with real property negotiator pursuant to government code on the non-potable water supply contract. We are going to discuss conference with district's labor negotiators pursuant to government code, section 54957.6, district's designated representatives.
And Fran was not able to be here tonight, so
Okay.
just wanted to let you know.
Okay, so let's go into closed session. Come on, something. And move into consent agenda. Approving the minutes for April 24, 2017.
Move the consent agenda, items A and B.
I'll second
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
If I may, I think it would be worth reporting that there was nothing to report out from closed session, just so the record's
Okay.
clear on that.
Good thinking.
Old business. Discuss draft terms for recycled water from Coastside County Water District and give direction to staff.
So at this point, you would ask that I bring this back at a future meeting, which would give you all time to take a look at that, and then give staff direction. I hadn't envisioned that we would actually sit here and work our way through the terms, but really wanting direction from the board, how much time, staff time and council time do you want expended at this point to start taking this and crafting a response? Because obviously there's staff time involved, but then there could also be a cost, a direct cost if council is involved in working with staff, which means it's actual dollars because we do pay his invoices.
We do.
We do.
Board.
I've got some thoughts. We had materials provided to us by former Director Lohman and by Ocean Colony partner, managing partner Bruce Russell, which had contracts that are currently in place in the neighborhood and around the state. They had terms that were not only hammered out but executed by each of those parties. I think we would do well to, both us and CCWD, to extract from those the kind of principles that we think are key. I think it's very simple to rely on the people who've already gone through that, just so we can make sure that, you know, we learn from their experience. All that material's there, it's free to have the material. Going through it, having council go through it, having staff go through it, that's not free. I was hoping that what we'd see from CCWD in their first offering would have incorporated the material that we all have in hand. But since it's not there, I think it's a necessary next step, and I'd like to suggest that we take the step to extract the key points that we feel are relevant to our project. I don't think it's all that hard. We can just skim through them, highlight the ones we want, put down the one sentence of, let's make sure we cover this thing. We don't have to hammer out all the terms, we need to hammer out what are going to be the terms that we're gonna have an answer for. And in particular, all the things that we wanna know what happens if certain things go wrong. So the plant breaks down and we can't produce any recycled water, what happens? The pipeline going across there breaks and they can't deliver the water, what happens? The Ritz falls into the ocean, the golf course goes bankrupt, what happens? This is not an exercise in being funny, this is actually working directly from the information that we have at hand about the known limited lifetime. We don't know how long, but we know it's limited. So,
You know, it's under 20 years.
we know it's under 20 years, and with every passing day, our ability to amortize that drives up the annual debt service cost, making it infeasible for OCP. I'm in a hurry, because we've now spent 10 years to get to this point, where there were maybe 30 years over which we could have covered this cost. Now we're down to 20, maybe, and it could get shorter, and we need to make sure that the one that needs it, the one that has the big business and financial tie-in, the ability to finance it, has the opportunity to actually get out there to spend the money so we can produce it. So I'm recommending that we have staff go through with a highlighter, take the materials that were provided by Director Lohman and Bruce Russell, highlight the things that we think are relevant, put them in a list, and send them back to CCWD, and then also bring them to probably our ad hoc
Recycle.
subcommittee.
Yeah.
So we can do, you know, so we can sit down, pencil out what we want to bring back to the full board committee.
I think the managers, the agency managers need to get together and look at this and weigh in as well.
I agree.
At a general managers meeting.
Okay.
I'm not certain about what role Montera has in this. My feeling is if we're talking about the phase one project, we're not talking about Montera. Montera is a possibility for the future. And I'm frankly uncomfortable even talking about that because I don't know anything about it.
Well, I can elucidate.
I don't want it elucidated right now. I'd like to see something, you know, maybe talk about it, but I think we need to be dealing with phase one of the project. And phase one is CCWD and Ocean Colony Partners.
Absolutely fixated on that. The reason that Montera is at the table is that Montera has an entitlement to 20% of water produced by SAM. And so we are all committed to getting phase one done in a way that leaves the door open for possible additional things down the line. But Montera is really here, I think, principally to safeguard that interest, while honestly, Montera's been the one driving the hardest to get phase one done. And so everything that needs to be in that term sheet needs to be done in a way that gets phase one done with an eye towards, let's make sure we don't foreclose any future possibilities,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
That's why Montera's involved. because Montera has a claim to some of that water.
Yeah,
As does CCWD if it goes through their district.
exactly,
Right.
exactly, everyone does.
Well,
And-
but
and-
remember that CCWD has expressed an interest in having all of the water.
Exclusive,
Right.
Exclusive.
And so Montera has a thought
that's
on
the
that.
key word.
Right,
I have, I
Right.
have problems with that, so I think that's one point that we need to address.
Well, it's just
Yeah.
something we have to talk out, and honestly, I don't think it's a long conversation. I think things are
No.
gonna take longer because the initial term sheet that we got is, it doesn't even touch on many of the things that are actually important to getting this thing done. And it touches on other things where, like, they kind of expanded on things that we haven't talked about before.
mhm,
So I'd like to make sure we're very fixated in what we put on the table to be strictly about phase one without foreclosing any phase two.
right,
Jim,
that makes
So
total
what's
sense.
the fourth thing, it's the fourth thing. Now, is it worth talking Director, since Director Lumen was involved with this?
He
Is it
gave
worth
us some-
circling back with him at all, or not?
Oh, I think for you guys, I think it'd be very beneficial,
Okay.
but for what Sam has to do right now, I think it's vital we just take those pieces of paper and highlight the pieces we want and make a list out of it. And a bigger, better list, so we can actually drive towards getting this thing done. I mean, if we really want this done, we're gonna have to hammer that out. Well, the only way to hammer it out is to start
We
writing
need
it
to
down.
start like,
Right, and we need to start with a real
Yes.
list, and it needs to be very focused on the contemplated project, not on some, this is not the time to reopen it and say, let's do the whole thing.
let's do potable
Yeah,
reuse.
no,
Right.
let's,
Yeah, yeah,
but I agree with not closing ourselves off for future possibilities for Montera or even for CCWD.
oh, right, yeah, yeah.
Maybe Matthew.
Matthew?
Oh, what Scott has just proposed sounds totally reasonable and rational. Why not do it that way? Because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are places across the state that have been in this for many years and probably figured out the pitfalls. So, yeah.
And we do have the guiding principles signed in 2015, some of which appear to have been not incorporated into the most recent
Yes.
iteration. And I think we need to be looking at balancing that. My concern on this is, without spending too much money, is because we have some huge bills coming for sewer pipelines. And while I can see going forward with this, I can't see rushing forward with it to try and implement this. I realize, Scott, that we would all like that to happen. We would have liked this project to have happened 10 years ago, as I recall. Some of you worked very hard for that.
Yeah, but it's not about rushing it, it's about getting the things done, and honestly, putting a list of things onto some paper.
And actually now is a good time to be working on this because of
Yeah,
grant funding cycles and,
there's other
So,
things we need
yeah.
on paper too, which is the elements of some kind of project plan. We've got multiple parties. Don't forget, Half Moon Bay has a very specific role because Half Moon Bay owns the land on the way to the creek. And so, you know, I keep making a list and I keep adding things to it, and I wanna see staff and others start to make this same list. Who's working on the easement between, it's probably gotta be CCWD and the city of Half Moon Bay. I'd love to see somebody take the initiative and actually have that conversation. Really, I think it's CCWD's job to initiate that, but I wouldn't be upset if somebody else initiated it, because it needs to happen. And until it happens, there's no pipeline gonna go across that land. There's the thing like, where's the RFP for project management for CEQA that CCWD is gonna be doing? I wanna see not only talk about it, but some kind of plan for it and some budgeting for it in their budget, which I can't find.
Yeah.
Right, so we need to be doing the things that are gonna get this project done, instead of talking about getting the project done.
And can the recycle committee do that? Can they come up with the list and work with staff on it?
I don't believe that the larger recycle committee is really well suited for that task.
I thought we
Or
had a
our
smaller
subcommittee.
Oh,
recycle.
our
The
committee,
SAM.
yes, our subcommittee,
Our committee.
would
Our
love to,
subcommittee,
would love to.
Now, I just have some points I'd like to raise. I mean, I read through it and I see some issues that I'd like to just raise now.
Good.
So, you know, I think Sam needs to be protected in the case that they decide that they don't want the water. And
Yes.
we need to be protected for the life of the facility.
Yes.
I'm troubled by the exclusive distributor thing. I think we need to think this through. You know, are there scenarios where that can be problematic? You know, number 5 says design for increase of capacity. Well, again, I think that takes us off the focus for phase 1. And then where they talk about cost, I think it must be the actual cost, the whole amount, and not up to a maximum.
Right.
Yeah, that language troubled me. And I think that needs to be redrafted. I think Bruce needs to see that, if he hasn't. And why would we front the money for a one-time payment? You know, I have issues with that as well.
Those are all excellent points.
So those are just some of the concerns that we have from our first go-through of the points.
Those are excellent points. I've got one that you reminded me of, and it's really kind of important. CCWD is going to have another agreement with OCP. And some of OCP's requirements are going to be things that we're going to need to meet. So wouldn't you think that what we hear from CCWD should incorporate OCP's concerns? They haven't had a conversation yet, to my knowledge. Bruce said so at our last meeting. I really think we need to ask them when they're gonna have that, because I don't want us to go through a round and then have Bruce go, wait a minute, I got a few more things, and then we have to go through that same round again. It's just, that seems silly.
Yeah.
Although Bruce brought us a bunch of stuff, I guess we can start to incorporate things that we know he's gonna be concerned about, but really it seems to make a lot of sense if they go ahead and have the conversation. Again, they should initiate this with OCP and get that conversation done.
Yeah.
So, and then bring us the full set.
And OCP has sort of projects in parallel, do they not? Like dredging their
Right.
storage ponds and.
Right.
So there are other things that are important to them that need to happen in parallel. So more coordination, focus.
Well, and Bruce has done just an awful lot of work.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of money, done a lot of preparation, some really good engineering work, some good planning work. He's researched the law thoroughly. He's just done all sorts of things. Sam has done a pilot project, researched the law, done the 25% design, all sorts of things.
OCP in a way has made it easy for us. They've
Mhm.
supplied, you know,
But we're all
sample
now-
agreements,
yeah.
templates, you know, so we need to,
And we're all now reliant on CCWD pitching in.
yep. And I'm still not seeing that progress that I'd like to see.
Well, so we've enumerated a few things.
Yes.
I think in staff-to-staff conversations, I'd like to, inquire about where some of these things might be.
And Director Lohman was on the SAM committee, so we need to replace him.
Yes.
Who's home?
Guys. You can think about it, we won't push
Not
tonight.
tonight, but
No.
It's generally the taker of the short straw.
It's possible. I mean, there's also
possible.
Director Warren, right? So
It's,
You
yes,
guys
it's
have- you guys have
possible
some
that the
options.
person whose chair I'm sitting in, he's a short straw guy.
So,
Okay, so staff has
Thanks for
direction.
T-shirts.
Yes, thank you very much for that, that's very helpful.
I will note that in looking at the CCWD draft budget, their CIP plan goes through, I think it is 2027. And I was having trouble finding anything to do with recycled water on their capital improvement program, so.
they have $100,000 budgeted. I did find that, but it's not in any way specific as far as I can find.
Right. So that's not much,
Yeah,
all things
I
considered.
don't see that doing all the things that we have talked about happening this year.
Is that over 10 years?
No, that's this year, I believe.
I'm not sure, but in any
Well, I can
event,
go look at
we need to
what
look
I had.
more closely. Moving right along then to, update on JPA general budget and contract collection services budget for fiscal year 2017-18.
Are we missing the resolutions for the board of directors?
They are under new business.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, that's
Which is
right, there's not
Oh.
an attachment.
there's no
No
attachment,
attachment.
yes. Director Slater Carter had just asked me to place this on the agenda so I could just give an update on where things are for the budget, in case the board had any questions about how things were moving along. All three of the agencies have received the budget some time ago, right after the board authorized me to put that forward. I did a general presentation to the city of Half Moon Bay, which also included sort of a high-level overview of the budget. I did a presentation at Montera's board meeting last week, which really focused on sort of the big ticket issue, which is the infrastructure. I have not heard back from GCSD yet. In speaking with Delia, I believe that it will be on the agenda for, I think that's the 18th,
Well, yes,
the meeting.
the main meeting, yes.
Yes, that there is a plan. I haven't heard back whether or not there's a request for me to be there or not, but it's my intent to make myself available for that meeting so that I can answer any questions that they might have. Delia did express that she had some questions and that she would email them to me. I haven't received them yet, so that I can either answer those questions in advance or be prepared to answer them at their meeting for their discussion. And my understanding is that Montera, they did not, it was an informational item last week, and that there wasn't an intent to approve it or not, but that would be done at the May 18th meeting.
Right, I do have some comments.
Yes.
From Clemens. And what about Half Moon Bay?
I haven't heard anything else back from Half Moon Bay as far as did they want me to come back and talk specifically about the budget, and my understanding is it will be on at the second meeting in May, is that correct? I haven't seen an agenda, so I don't know.
I'm not sure, actually.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the reason is, so the budgeted amount for Half Moon Bay is up 99%
Yes,
as a result of the Coronado Forest Bank.
yes.
So we're doing the due diligence we feel we need to do on behalf of the ratepayers, the taxpayers, to understand this and what it means to us. So we're not going to rush that due diligence. We're taking the time we feel we need to act responsibly,
Yes.
so.
I had not received any questions, so that's why I didn't know if there was anything, because I hadn't heard back. I didn't mean that meant that it was over, done with, or anything. I just didn't have anything to report.
We're doing the due diligence.
Mhm.
Do the representatives from Granada have any comments at this point?
My comment would be, I admit we're behind, because our general manager has been unable to not only attend meetings, but even work for
Yeah.
weeks. And we heavily rely on Chuck for particularly fiscal
Oh, absolutely.
matters, so,
Yeah.
you know,
Is he-
before,
We didn't have a meeting, and we haven't had a meeting for a while, because of that.
yeah.
And by
So, before I make any other comments, I would, I want to have our meeting and see what Chuck's take on it, and I'm sure he'll have one.
I know Chuck.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And do we have any more specific comments from Half Moon Bay that you're just doing your due diligence and looking? Well, I have some very specific comments from a conversation with Clemens, and I'm sure Scott will.
Well, we compared some notes already, so.
Yes, and I think it's going to be similar for each of the other agencies, and that is we're very concerned about rate shock
Yeah.
to our ratepayers. And looking for the past budget links on the SAM website, I could not find them anywhere.
They're under documents.
Maybe we can put budgets as its own
Okay.
just to make it easier for people who don't like to dive deep into. When Scott did Montero.com, I love the website, it was lists. I could scroll, I could look through the list, I could find what I
I
wanted.
got so much grief for that.
I know.
Montero.com.
It wasn't pretty, but you could find
You could
things.
find everything, so I got spoiled. But if we could make it so that these things are easier for folks to access past budgets. According, Clemens, and I agree with him, is, there are two basic problems, and the budget format, is untrackable against other past budgets. So it's hard to know where we're going, or how, well, we know where we're going, it's hard to know what was done in the past. And I don't have a solution for that, but maybe it could be picked up in the notes. One thing in the comments that would make it much easier for me is on the budget, on the spreadsheets, you have a number for each item, but when you go into the notes, the number's not there.
Okay.
And it's just a silly little thing, but I was looking for number 5 going, wait a minute, what? Gotta go back and forth to find what number 5 is. It's just a simple
Simple
thing.
things like that can make a big difference.
But the biggest problem is, and I think it's gonna be a problem for every single one of the agencies, is the amount right now. And, I see SRT is here, thank you very much for coming. I would like to see, and Clemens would like to see how we can maybe, there are some things in here that maybe should be postponed for some years. As a way of, not the infrastructure, I saw that look.
Gotcha, Tim.
But it is cumulative stuff, like maybe some of the new furniture, what appeared to be new furniture for the office, or starting an equipment, what was the word, how was it used? A fund for, equipment, for instance, for new trucks and so on. The equipment, which says contributions go to a replacement fund for vehicles. And it's my recollection, and Scott, you're the longest term here, that would take a policy change, because this agency hasn't been doing funds, cumulative funds for future expenses. I mean, that's why
Which is a mistake.
which is a mistake, but we should have a discussion of it. It's in the budget.
Well, the one thing, we've run our equipment into the ground, right? We don't have a fixed, we're gonna get this many years out of a truck thing. And it's the way that Sam has done it, it's the way Montero's done it, I'm sure others do it that way too. It's like, we get what life we can out of it, and when it starts to cost more to repair it than it's worth, we say, it's time. And we'll dispose of it to try to get whatever value it has, and then we'll go get another truck. We know it's coming, and that's part of what a CIP is for, to make sure that we know what kind of monetary demand we're gonna have in one of the coming years. And the closer we get, the tighter we can dial in when we think that money's gonna be coming. We've got reserves to serve some of this purpose, certainly not all. I mean, we paid for a whole bunch of this past year out of reserves rather than out of cash flow. And so that when you look at our reserves now, you see they have a big dent because we just went and took money out of reserves rather than levying it against the agencies. So, policy change, we certainly have never fully funded depreciation. I don't know of any agency here that does that.
Paul Perkovic.
Well, Paul brought it up every year in August, after we finished our budget, and every year in August, I said, Paul, the budget's already done. And so, every year in August, he'd bring it up again. And
And he was treasurer.
I certainly value the notion that we're gonna try to fully fund depreciation, but let me mention a couple of things, or one in particular, and that is that when it comes time to replace something, it often turns out that the thing that has worn out that we need to replace can be replaced with something in a different way or with a different material in a way that's more efficient. And so while, like, I could point to the outfall and say, we've got a $30 to $40 million liability hanging over our heads. One way we could approach that is we could go save in an account somewhere $30 to $40 million in case we ever have to replace it because somebody drags an anchor across it, or we have just an awful earthquake that just shatters it, or whatever, some catastrophic thing. Or another way to look at it is, if we really go hard at this recycling thing, we don't have to have that outfall for anything but the biggest flows. And that would really change the nature of what we have to do to maintain it. So instead of putting $30 million in the bank waiting, we might take a slice of that and say, let's build some really cool recycling infrastructure and start to do the thing that we know we already want to do. And if we understand that we can at least have the conversation. I'm not saying it's what we should do, but it's one of those areas where we don't have to replace A with A. We might be able to replace A with a little bit of A and a lot of B. And so the notion of we're gonna need to spend the money is really important. And to your point you made a couple of meetings ago, the notion that we're going to either have to fix something on a maintenance schedule or on an emergency schedule. And if we can do it on the regular maintenance schedule, it's gonna cost us less and let us pick and choose our projects rather than being told by Mother Nature which projects to do. And I shouldn't say Mother Nature, it's through our own option of not having done it, right? So I think it's complex, and I think as much as I love the idea of having all that money to fully fund depreciation, I don't think any of us has ever found it reasonable to do.
Well, but
And so we always got our CIP, we got a certain amount of money that we know our ratepayers can handle, and we prioritize it so we can do the things that are on the
I'll go
list.
after you.
Well, I mean, the other thing you can do is, you can educate the ratepayers as to the needs of the plant, so that they understand what we have to do, why we have to do it, and why, and how things cost money. And, sometimes you have to raise rates. I mean, there's the education component that I think needs to be done as well. I just wanna make sure that we don't underfund our pension obligations. I don't wanna
Amen.
go there and get on that, that road. Happy to look at other ways to cut costs as long as we're not, closing out our ability to deal with other urgent technical problems.
I
later
think,
on.
yeah, the problem with rate shock is you go along and you keep your costs real low, and then, and you're so efficient and economizing and all of this, and then all of a sudden, something happens. And what I have discovered is that, people are much more comfortable with incremental rates over that time.
Flatten it out.
No, you actually keep it going, you don't flatten it out, you actually create,
Well, you smooth it out, I guess smooth out the better word.
you, so that you don't, so you
Yes.
don't have that shock.
You
And
keep
can
spending
do-
it, so you're not, you maintain it, so you don't have to like break fix it, right?
Exactly, and so that people are not totally shocked by a budget like this
It's always
coming
cheaper
in.
today.
But we have these problems now, and, I had asked Beverly if she couldn't talk to Keishan, but he's not in right now, he's out. To talk to SRT about perhaps ways that we can reduce this potential rate shock for each of the agencies. I know, knowing Chuck the way I have known him for as many years as I have known him, I can hear what he is going to be saying. And it's not pretty.
Mhm.
And yet,
And
the events
MWS,
happened in the Granada Sanitary District Service area.
but it was the SAM system. But that aside, Montera has been saving our reserves, we have a huge under the Highway 1 project that we finally have the permits for, and we're ready to go full steam on that one. And it's $1 million and something. And we've put the money away for it, but now we're looking at Sam, and how are we we've gotta do our project. So that's why, I think it's important for this board and our engineers to work together to see how to spread it out. Another question that came up looking at page 12 is, you have reallocated budget between line items to more accurately reflect the expenditures after implementing the new accounting software. What's that mean?
We have a new chart of accounts, so things that used to be in this line item description is actually better in a different line item description because of what it is. So instead of it being operating supplies was a catch-all, it's maintenance equipment, or, you know, something that is more descriptive. And we were, as we were transitioning from last year to this year, we've now got the new chart of accounts, and so we were sort of guessing where those things might fall out, where based on history and the descriptions that we could get out of QuickBooks, and looking at some of those past invoices and talking to staff, you know, trying to figure out where they belong. And as we've gone through this year, we've discovered actually they belong in maybe different line items, so where we put them in the budget isn't where they really ought to be. But the total dollar is the same, it's just which line item does really describe to the public, to the board, what types of things are we buying.
Do we have land we can sell?
No,
No.
Sam doesn't own.
Always a thought, but once it's gone, it's
Just thought I
gone.
would ask it, it's just
Yeah.
one of those questions you ask when you're, you know, hard up for money.
We got a dozen kidneys at the table, but.
You
No,
know,
I think, what everybody does is you get your CIP, you order it in terms of priority, and you work your way down until you've got as much money as you can do in a year. That's what we all do. And where we've struggled is that we, for a variety of reasons, have not kept an active CIP here at SAM. We have something now to work with, and I'm willing to bet that where we wind up is something that looks a lot like that we go from the top and work our way down.
Well, except if you look at the priority projects, the early projects, they are ranked because of regulatory demands,
The regulators are not
hazard
making.
and fine avoidance.
Sure, well, that sounds good, but when you look at the individual projects, like for example, the sludge watering facility, how much is that one, 300,000? Do we have to do that this coming year? Which regulator said we had to do that? There's benefit to doing it. Absolutely, I'm all for it, but when? That, I think we need to talk about, and that's $300,000. Now, we've been putting that off for a long time, but we've been putting off a lot of things, so we're gonna have to play some catch up, and we're not gonna like it. No one ever likes having to play budget catch up.
Yeah.
But that's what we're here for. That's our job, is to get in here and you know, sharpen up the pencils, lick them a little bit, and hope they're not made of lead, and go order these things a little more carefully, and ask very hard questions about what happens if we don't do this year. At Montera, things we've done in the past that are painful, we had a generator that was in, it was just, we didn't like it, we were having to spend a lot to maintain it, but in '09, there wasn't the revenue to go do the replacement for that generator. It was a really expensive one. And we agreed, we're gonna just maintain the poo out of this thing and try to keep that alive until
interesting
we have,
phrase.
until we have the revenue that can support replacing it. And that's what we did, and so we kinda, chewed our fingernails for about 2 years. There's things you do, because we can't just go run to the ratepayers to say, you know what, if you don't mind, just double up your sewer payment this year. None of us thinks that's reasonable. It's not gonna happen. So let's go in and squeeze on each one of these things and see what kind of noise it lets out and see if we can put it off a year.
It'd be easier, maybe take out the mosquito abatement district charge.
Oh, that would be nice. We don't have mosquitoes here. Maybe one of the things that should be happening and fairly soon is for SRT, who's here, or Keisha, when he gets back, is to meet with the engineers, agency engineers. There's what, a week before the Half Moon Bay meeting, or is it 2 weeks? And maybe, as you say, flatten some of this out. Smooth it out. So that but we need to do it from an engineering point of view.
Value engineering. There's an app for that.
There is.
Well, so it sounds like next steps are, each agency has some things to put down on paper. I think it's obvious that we want you and Keisha to sit down and maybe work with SRT as well and see what we can do, because double that amount of what we do in any given year is something that none of us sees a way to get done.
I don't think it's going to pass, and I think that you've got 15 people, 5 on each board, who have to approve this, and
The
it's going to be
99%
tough.
are not gonna like a 99% increase.
Right.
That's
No,
right.
and I just really don't believe that we have to do it. I think that we've got some outstanding technical debt, no question. But I think it's time to take a careful look at some of the scheduling. Some of the, we may have a project that there's just no way we can get it done this year because of where we are on the calendar and permitting and all that. Maybe we got some things that we can just get right over the hump into the next fiscal year, where we can know it's coming and anticipate that's, one of these projects is gonna be a big one that's first in line. But, I mean, these are things that we can do, and I think we're gonna have to sharpen the pencil.
Well, I think we're gonna have to way sharp pencil.
Yeah. No, I'm grateful, honestly.
Machete.
But don't get me wrong, I'm grateful that we're having this conversation about what are the things that we're gonna get done. Because this is a real improvement and something that I think we've all been looking forward to getting to, and it took a while, and the longer it took, the harder this part gets.
Maybe we could move on to the happy items.
Well, before we move on, under the JPA general budget, there are some items with miscellaneous expenses that jumped 53% and so on, and we're trying, Clemens and I were trying to figure out exactly what these were, and when we went over to the comments, the numbers on the comments didn't match the numbers on the spreadsheet. So I'm not sure what happened there. For instance, the travel and training, unless it's been broken out between admin and O&M and others. And if that's the case, it would be nice to sort of, I don't know, see some kinds of cumulatives. But yeah, the financial details, Clemens and I were trying to figure out what exactly had gone on. For instance, the travel and training, I think that was one, building and maintenance services is up 132% at $60,000, and, where did that go? It says 24,000 on this financial details, so we weren't sure how it was, why it didn't match, and so we kind of, I need more of a guide, a manual. If it's in other places, then I need to know where else.
Well, and each department has exactly the same line items, so it could be in infrastructure,
Okay,
it could be in operations. So, and then when you roll it all up, then you see the total, so.
but here it's on general budget, and then you've got admin, and then, so under the financial notes, they, as I said, they don't match, and I won't repeat myself, I'll be happy to show you afterwards. Let's go to the more happy ones. Yes, yes, yes. Where are we? Oh, Sam budget. All of this fun stuff. We have, board training, yes, 8C number, wait, we've got 8A.
8A and 8B.
8A, which is a resolution for, and they're not here,
Jim Harvey.
Jim Harvey.
Well, no, normally we would adopt the resolution and then we would ask them to come to a future meeting and present it.
Presented.
Ah, with cookies, okay.
Just in case we don't actually
Right.
save
In
save
case,
all
in
sorts of
case,
embarrassment.
oh,
In case
Okay.
we decide not to give it.
Yeah, never mind, yeah.
gotcha. Okay, well, these were wonderful resolutions,
Mhm.
and, do we have a motion for a resolution for, of appreciation for Jim Harvey?
I strongly move.
And I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And then we have resolution number 5-20117, 2017 for, as a expression of gratitude for Mr. Rick Loman.
So moved.
I'll strongly second that.
Wow, that was a tie.
So give it to Ruddock.
Ruddock, okay.
Yeah,
Like, I heard it like simultaneously.
it was good, it was rehearsed. All those in
Can we get a video
favor?
playback?
Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries. And then we are on to 8C, which is discuss, recommend changes, and amend the board training, education, and conference policy, which I had asked to have on, not that I was considering any changes, but because we have so many new members, that I thought it would be nice for everyone to know exactly what the policies are.
Yeah, I have no
Sounds good.
problem with any of them.
I think they're fine.
Yeah.
That and the board remuneration expenditure reimbursement
Yeah.
policy. I move that we accept both of those.
I think it to do one at a time.
I think.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to do
Yeah,
anything
it's just-
because you're
it's
not
just-
making
Because
changes.
we're not
So
changing.
you can
Okay.
just direct staff that no changes are recommended at this time.
No changes recommended, as far as.
Okay.
Right.
That's fine with me, I read through it and made a single note, so.
Oh,
That's a good sign.
Unless you
Yeah.
want.
that's good, huh?
I hear you're a tough note taker.
And then, gee, we're almost through. We've got, discuss options for infrastructure, to finance infrastructure projects and to reduce member agency, impacts on member agency assessments.
Yes, so this was a request from Director Slater Carter for staff to look at potential options for financing the cost of infrastructure. And as you recall from the board communications policy, if it's something that the general manager determines could have a significant impact on staff time, that has to be proposed and recommended by the full board. So that's why it's on here, and it's not in a great level of detail because staff did not want to preemptively expend more than that amount of time without the board being okay with it, because that had happened in the past and that had caused some discord. So what I did do was I put in here the information that I was able to get. I made some quick phone calls and talked to some folks at the state with regards to the revolving loan fund. Also getting some information regarding the iBank loan and what sort of requirements we might need, as well as Kishan and Rochelle from SRT had gone to this, Sacramento. There happened to have been a financing fair to talk, and that's what I attached for you, was what was presented at that. And it was we did it intentionally with the idea of, one, the recycled water project, and two, knowing that Kishan was working on the 5-year infrastructure plan, to look at what sort of opportunities there might be for SAM to get financing. I will tell you that in talking to several agencies that have recently put in for SRF loans, that they have heard from the state that there's no money. They have so many projects in the pipeline that it would be 6 to 8 months to even look at the application, and a very low likelihood that, at least for this year, anybody gets funding if they're not already in the pipeline.
Yeah, I actually saw some notice today that they have like 6 million, applications valued at about 6 million in play, and that the only workshops they were having were to take input on future
Exactly.
policies and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
They've done such a great job of selling. It used to be they couldn't get people to apply because everybody had heard the horror stories about how difficult it was to get the loans, and it was only the great big agencies like LA and Orange County that were doing it. And they did such a great job of going to CWEA and CASA and talking about how streamlined the process was. They just got flooded, and so now they have way more applications than they have funding. So that was one of the possible opportunities, but it's not likely, at least not in the near future. That doesn't mean that we couldn't put something forward for the following year or the year after and get it in the pipeline for consideration. It's just probably not likely for the 17-18 year, whatever projects we end up with. The iBank loan is a similar function. It's relatively low interest. Obviously, some of it is dependent upon the type of project and how big of a loan that we're asking for. And it has very similar types of requirements as far as debt service is concerned.
Okay, you have a question?
So my question is, what does the, JPA allow us to do? I mean, are we allowed to finance? I'm not
Yes,
sure.
we
Oh,
can,
yeah.
we can do anything that a special district or anybody else can do. The only difference is, because SAM itself doesn't have its own revenue source, and that would be pledging revenue from the
Okay.
member agencies, the member agencies would have to adopt
Right,
resolutions.
okay, so it's a little bit different from just a plain old special district.
Right,
because
but we
it's a
do have the
JPA.
legal
So
ability
we
to do
still
so.
have to, the burden becomes the individual agencies in terms of.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It would not be likely that we would want to pursue a bond, for example. Whereas each agency could, but SAM, that'd be really weird.
But for a loan, Sam would go in and do it, but there would have to be the backing of the 3 member agencies,
Yeah.
much like we've talked with recycled water, where the backing behind it is the funding from OCP and CCWD, but it would be Sam going through the process. And then, of course, there's the possibility of the Department of Water Resources grants, and there's a laundry list of them in here. Unfortunately, there are many of them that SAM does not qualify for.
Right.
The small community ones would be great, but we're just a little bit too big for that. But that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities, and they are more than likely very project specific. So for example, like the recycled water project and partnering with Calex, and there might be some other opportunities where we can find ways, green business or something else where we can put some of that together. But for things like just the Granada force main replacement, not likely that, at least on the surface, that these grants we would qualify for.
Well, and most of them fund projects, not operation and maintenance.
Right, but the replacement of the Granada force main would be a project, in the sense that if there was still, for example, Clean Beaches grants, we potentially could have qualified for that, but unfortunately those are over and done with. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some partnering that we could do, something for clean water. There could be a grant that it would qualify for, especially with our ocean and the Monterey reserve. I mean, it's just on the surface, at least as far as the California grants, nothing is jumping out at this time. That doesn't mean that we couldn't partner with someone else to put something together.
So it appears that we do have to figure out a way to maybe draw this infrastructure out so that we have the opportunity possibly to get grants or loans or whatever, because this year it's all coming from each of the agencies, and that's going to lead to rate shock.
Well, and there are still some possibilities for, like I said, the iBank loan. I have not received any information that they're limited in their resources, so that is still a possibility. It's a slightly lengthier process than just a person going to a bank getting a loan, because there are 3 agencies behind SAM that all have to go through the same hoops. If we have to provide 5 years worth of financials, it's not just SAM's, it's the member agencies. If a resolution has to be passed, it has to be passed by all of the agencies. So it is just a lengthier process. That does not mean that it's not a possibility. And it could be something, whereas the state revolving fund, it's a 20 or 30-year loan process is typical. It is possible that we could do something shorter, like a 5-year loan, where it's really just a bridge to get us through that rate process, and then pay it back. So there are
Bridges
some,
have substantially higher interest rates, however.
and that's what I
Short-term
don't
loans,
have.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I have not spent the time doing, because that would take longer than the policy would allow for, because it would be certainly longer than a 2-hour investigation. There would be a lot of conversations with various entities on what those requirements would be, and gathering information in advance so that they could take a look at it to give guidance.
Maybe crowdfunding?
Oh, I
Yeah.
like that.
Bake sales,
We do that already.
a SAM
It's kind
calendar,
of formalized,
About
but
6,000 customers.
a SAM calendar.
Sam
Ooh,
calendar, that's
we
right.
could get the
I
crew
like
to
that
vote.
idea.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't want to, I don't want to sound, like, it all is doom and gloom. It's just, unfortunately, right now, a lot of agencies were sort of ahead of us in putting in for these things, and some of the funding that was available 2-3 years ago is now done. That doesn't mean that more won't come, and I know I've been talking with Kellex specifically about the recycled water, but I haven't had any conversations with her as of yet about any other possible partnering, and certainly working with SRF and their experience. Once again, I didn't want to go too far down that road if that wasn't where the board wanted me to go. If I get direction to do that, then certainly we can start having those conversations to brainstorm what types of grant applications we might be able to submit for the types of projects that are already on our list. Obviously, having the 5-year plan was the first step to
Right.
actually getting
Yep, you're absolutely right.
the conversation started. So I just needed direction from the board that you do or do not want staff to expend resources in search of grants and other funding opportunities.
Go for it.
Everybody else does, why not us?
Let's make it a motion then, so that it's official. Who
But
would
what's
like,
official?
I heard a motion
About what?
called go for it.
I would like to direct staff to look into grants and funding possibilities for our infrastructure.
Creative accounting, yeah.
Oh, wait,
No.
I don't want that in the paper.
Go fund me calendars, whatever
GoFundMe
options,
yeah.
partnering.
No
Creative.
calendars allowed.
Creative financing, not creative accounting.
Yeah, no.
Creative financing.
Creative financing, okay.
Okay, and the board all agrees, so we're, good. General managers reports.
I do not have any reports, written reports this month, or this meeting. It will be at the next meeting, when I hope to have all my staff back. It has been rather scary in the last 2-week period. I was here, just me, for a week because Kathy was out, Kisha was out, and Tim was down at the CWEA conference. So that was a little interesting around here. We were all crossing our fingers that nothing would happen. And then this week it's Tim and I holding, this last week was Tim and I holding the fort down. And we are crossing our fingers that everybody gets back safe and sound next week. It's been a little thin around here.
As are we.
Yes.
Attorney's report.
Well, I could give you a report, an update on some of the legislation, but given the hour, you may wanna dispense with that and take it up at another time. I'm open, whatever the board's pleasure is.
Let's
Please
just
be
move on.
quiet.
I like that suggestion.
Director's reports.
No?
Okay, future agenda items.
I do think we need to talk about the ad hoc recycle water subcommittee.
Oh, please, yes.
Oh, yes, that would be good.
To get
Good
together.
director's report.
Yeah, well, we need to get together.
Yeah.
And I think we've got our task cut out for us. We just take the papers that we've got and highlight the items and make a list out of them. And I think that would make a good meeting.
Okay.
Future
so-
agenda.
I can send you my availability.
Okay, so we have your
Perfect.
calendar,
It's
talk to my
tight, but,
calendar and
yeah.
see what they can hammer out.
But yeah, you need to identify your,
Right.
yeah.
Letters.
No, I'll send out a doodle poll or something.
Okay.
That's right.
We'll do it.
Okay.
Survey
Future agenda items and upcoming meetings.
As requested by Director Warren, I have recreated something that you are probably familiar with, which was the spreadsheet that staff used to provide on things that had been requested and where things were. The only thing I didn't do was put a priority on these, because obviously that would just be my interpretation. So it would probably be helpful for staff if the board could take a look at this and at a future agenda item, give some priority to this so staff knows where to expend effort in responding to these requests. And then we will keep this going.
Can we just do that by email, maybe?
Yeah.
Email to the chair?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and then that way we can put that together for a future agenda item and everybody can agree with the prioritizations.
One thing I would like to see on the agenda is in the paper last week, I noticed that Half Moon Bay has some sewer projects, $6 million of budget is budgeted apparently for sewer projects. And I would appreciate it because whatever Half Moon Bay does on their sewer system is likely to have an effect on the SAM system. And so I would love to have a presentation from Half Moon Bay and a analysis from staff, SAM engineering staff, on how these potential changes in the Half Moon Bay sewer system are going to affect the functioning and other issues with SAM. And
Can you give an example?
well, let me see, I believe that it wasn't in the paper, but I made some phone calls and discussions, and apparently there is the sewer pipe from Half Moon Bay to SAM is going to be increased from 10 to 12 inches. And that's going to make a volumetric difference that we need to see how it would affect SAM.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I'd be particularly interested to get Keishan's view on what that does for full inundation.
I know what it would
Well, I mean, what we know
We'll
is
get
the
the
right,
engineering impact.
Yeah,
well,
We don't have anything in detail yet, we were just
Yeah.
looking at ways that we can solve that
Right,
problem
Sure,
with the
yeah.
other Kelly.
oh yeah, no, it
Yeah.
sounds like you guys are, honestly,
Totally conceptual.
yeah, anytime anybody's looking at spending money on their infrastructure, it's usually a great thing. But yeah, if we increase the available volume that could be flowing into SAM, then we've got to ask the question about what that does
Right.
for what happens upstream the other direction, because they'll be in contention probably. So that'd be really interesting. But for me, I would just love to kind of get a high-level sketch of what kind of projects each of us is doing in the coming year.
that's true. We could ask
Yeah, it seems to me
Clemens to
that
come
look at
and talk about
what
our
each of us is doing. Yeah.
freeway project, or Highway 1 project.
yeah, you're putting in a freeway?
You know, it feels like it on weekends.
Maybe you've got our engineers come
Yeah,
and
maybe that's
Do
a
the
subject for the
presentation.
general managers
Yep.
meeting.
Yeah,
General
We can talk
managers
about
and
how we can
engineers.
do
I
that,
think
yeah.
that would be great.
just a high-level presentation of here's things we're doing. I mean, it's, And we've talked about helping our customers understand more of what we do. If we have some presentations here about what's happening up and down the coast for sewer maintenance,
For clean beaches?
and we don't have to put stamps on things, we can just put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, we can still do the stamps, but
Okay.
Very
I will
cool.
bring that up at the next managers meeting.
So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So done.